The moderation in inflation was largely supported by monetary policy tightening, relative stability in the exchange rate, and lower and stable export petroleum prices. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 22.1% against the US dollar in the year to July 17, 2023, compared to 21.1% in the same period in 2022. The cedi, excluding the January 2023 depreciation of 20%, has depreciated by an impressive 1.8% between February and January 17, 2023. Total export receipts, Mr. Speaker, fell by 7.9% to $8.2 billion on the back of lower crude oil export receipts. Crude oil exports declined by 41.3% year-on-year due to a 21.4% decline in volumes and 25.3% fall in prices. Current account recorded a provisional surplus of $849 million compared with a deficit of $1.1 billion for the same period, 2022. And gross international reserves dropped from $6.2 billion at the end of December 2022 to $5.3 billion, 2.5 million in June 2023, reflecting BOGs reducing their foreign liabilities in line with the IMF program. Net international reserves received a boost from gold reserves and improved to $2.3 billion to 1.1 months of import cover compared to $1.4 billion or 0.6 months of import cover recorded at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, on banking developments and the outlook, the banking sector posted unexpected, relatively strong performance during the first half of the year. Despite the lingering effects of the DDEP, the banks have reported increased deposits and investments, higher profitability, and return on equity of over 35%. The impact of the DDEP, such as the increase in non-performing loans, was partly moderated by the timely introduction of temporary regulatory reliefs. In the outlook, the operationalization of the $750 million Ghana Financial Stability Fund and the planned recapitalization of banks would ensure stability as well as strengthen financial intermediation to support the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the provincial data on government fiscal operation for the first half of 2023 indicate: 1. A slower pace in expenditure execution relative to revenue shortfall, resulting in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 6.3 billion Ghana cedis, 0.8% of GDP, compared to the 2023 half-year budget deficit targets of 28.3 billion or 3.5% of GDP. A corresponding primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus, Mr. Speaker, of 8.8 billion Ghana cedis, 1.1% of GDP, compared to the target of a surplus of 310 million Ghana cedis. Overall cash deficit of 10.3 billion, 1.3% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year budget target of 35.4 billion, 4.4% of GDP, and a corresponding primary balance on cash basis of a surplus of 4.8 billion, 0.6% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year deficit target of 6.9 billion or 0.9% of GDP. We are back on track to a positive primary balance. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal balances are driven by total revenue and grants for the first half of 2021 billion, 8.4% below the target of 64.7 billion. Despite the shortfall, the outturn shows a nominal year-on-year growth of 41.8%. The key driver of revenue deviation is a lower than programmed oil receipts and total expenditure of 68.5 billion, 26.3% below the program expenditure of 92.9 billion. All other expenditure lines were contained within their respective targets for the period, except for compensation of employees and expenditure on goods and services. The higher-than-program compensation of employees outturn stems from higher payments for wage and salaries from the implementation of the 30% base pay increase for public sector workers, which was agreed to after the 2023 budget was presented and approved by this August House last year. We needed, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers. Mr. Speaker, government introduced several revenue measures to support the fiscal consolidation and growth agenda. The policy interventions were specifically targeted at growing the revenue base to yield an estimated 1.35% of GDP. The Ministry of Finance and GRA are working together to ensure the realization of the full yield in the near future through enhanced collection efforts, governance, and EVAT implementation. Mr. Speaker, arising from the DDEP, several structural changes have commenced in the reporting of Ghana's debt data. The debt from the special purpose vehicles, which previously was not part of the central government debt, has now been included. Furthermore, we'll be including the long-term debt of selected SOEs, such as Cocoa Board and contingent liabilities arising from the IPPs, PPAs, and financial sector recapitalization. Mr. Speaker, the macroeconomic environment has changed significantly since the 2023 budget was presented to this House in November 2022. Mr. Speaker, although pressure still exists and there are formidable risks in the horizon, our economy is in a better position than it was 7 months ago, as the macroeconomic environment has seen relative stability since the beginning of the year. This is largely explained by factors including the positive sentiments following the staff-level agreement reached in December 2022 and the subsequent approval of the 3-year, $3 billion IMF ECF program, the eventual passage of all fiscal measures in the 2023 budget by the House, and the completion of the DDEP program, and China's agreement to co-chair the OCC with France. Mr. Speaker, I have also